Alas, poor Yarrick, we hardly knew thee. Commissar Yarrick, a beloved character in the 40k universe. But who is he? To many people who are maybe newer to the setting, or who may not know anything about the 40k universe, but have seen something online regarding the Commissar, I wanted to make this video. This will be a telling of the story of Yarrick from his early days all the way up into the Third Armageddon War. And then we will have a discussion afterwards of the character as a whole and maybe some speculation or some fun fan theories that I've seen in the past. To start, Yarrick's homeworld was overrun by orks when he was only 10 years old. He survived by hiding and setting up traps that killed the Gretchen that were forging through the ruins of the city. He had learned how to survive from his grandfather, who was a veteran in the Imperial Guard. Using the different strategies that his grandfather had taught him, he was able to survive for 7 months until the planet was liberated by an Imperial Guard unit. After the planet was liberated, the searching was done. They found only one survivor, Yarrick. And after his rescue, he devoted his life to studying orks. And was considered one of the Imperium's leading experts. During the Second War for Armageddon, Yarrick was put in charge of the forces defending Hades, a hive city in the sector. A hive city is a massive, self-contained city, usually built on top of itself, with the ruling class at the top and the poor people in the bottoms, as many of the worlds in the 40k universe aren't very habitable outside of the hive cities. There are these giant constructions with millions and millions of people living in them, often incredibly densely populated. Yarrick was put in charge of the defense of one, and during the first assault of it, the war boss leading that charge and one of the top generals of that war got into a one-on-one fight with Yarrick. The orc used his power claw to sever Yarrick's arm just below the elbow, but as the orc grabbed his arm, Yarrick swung his sword, beheading the orc. Yarrick took the power claw, the very one that took his arm, and used it as a replacement to strike fear in the orcs that saw him. In addition, he also replaced one of his eyes, the laser one, called the Baleful Eye, to play on the orc superstition that believed that he had an evil eye and could kill an orc with a single glance. His defense was so fierce that Ghazghkull Thraka, known as the Beast of Armageddon, the largest, most brutal war boss known to be alive, and the leader of the orc fleet, led the charge in person against the Hive City. Ghazghkull tried every tactic he knew to deprive the Hive City of resources, cutting them off so that he could take the city, but he was always thwarted by Yarrick. Yarrick, realizing that the fight was a losing battle, set a trap, allowing the orcs to invade the city and escaping in a shuttle run after 6 months of non-stop fighting. After he escaped, he vowed to hunt down and kill Ghazghkull. After escaping, he vowed to hunt down and kill Ghazghkull. He chased Ghazghkull for 10 years afterwards. Every time he thought he had Ghazghkull, Ghazghkull would flee with his forces, until finally Yarrick directed Ghazghkull to land on a planet called Golgoth. Unfortunately, it was a trap. As the orcs formed up in the open field, another group from behind attacked Yarrick's forces. In addition, an orc space hulk appeared overhead, driving away Imperial naval support. A space hulk is a giant wrecked starship from humanity's past, when they were at their technological height, that are often plagued with tyrannids or orcs or chaos demons. But the orcs will find them, repurpose them, get them running, and then use them as giant warships. With his naval support driven off and surrounded by all sides, the orcs quickly devastated the Imperial defenders and Yarrick was captured by Ghazghkull. Yarrick was taken to the Orc Space Hulk, where they took his power claw, laser eye, and weapons, and dropped him into a chute of refuse with many scavenging squigs. Squigs are bipedal animals of the orc race. They appear in many different shapes and sizes and have many different looks to them, but squig is kind of a generic term for beasts of the greenskins. Yarrick would hunt down these squigs and would use their quills to make a ladder to climb up the chute to find Ghazghkull waiting for him. Ghazghkull threw him in a cell with all the other human slaves. Yarrick organized a revolt with the other human slaves. They destroyed a large ammo depot to create a distraction, then ran for the closest shuttle bay. Unfortunately, all the vehicles there were out of commission, so they blew them up, and then made their way to the bridge. Yarrick was the only one that made it all the way to the bridge, killing several orcs in the bridge room. Then he activated all the systems on the ship at the same time. The force of all the jets pulling in different directions, ripping the ship apart. He watched as a giant explosion and debris started coming at him. He closed his eyes, but he awoke. He looked around and his claw was back. His eye was back. Confused, he sat up and he exited the room that he was in to see he was surrounded by orcs. But they weren't trying to fight him. They were cheering. They were congratulating him. They led him to the closest launch bay where he met Ghazghkull. Ghazghkull stepped aside, allowing him to enter the craft, and told him it was a good fight, and a good enemy is hard to find. He allowed him to go back and to prepare, warning him that the orcs would soon return to reclaim Armageddon. 50 years later, the Third War of Armageddon broke out. Yarrick was brought out of retirement to take charge of the defenses, and started by shooting down any orc craft that attempted to land on the planet, forcing the orcs to use pre-built fortresses made of asteroids to land on the planet. But once the orcs landed, Yarrick led the assault, driving the orcs from the planet, and joined the Black Templar Space Marines as they gave chase to the orcs. Now, this is all I have found so far on the story of Yarrick. I knew him as the nemesis of Ghazghkull, as I am more of an orc fan than I am of an Imperial Guard fan. But I think that characters in the lore that aren't special, they aren't super soldiers like the Space Marines, they don't have some crazy psychic ability like the Emperor, they aren't a internal so that they can revive infinite times, but he's just a man whom devoted his life to being able to defeat the orcs, to understand them truly, and to beat them at their own game. And I think characters like that are inspiring. I think it's really cool to see in literature like this that there are characters whom are just normal people who are able to overcome exceptional odds and to do incredible things despite the fact that they do not have the technology or the augmentations that the average super soldier would have. But I think Yarrick is a really interesting character, and it's unfortunate that he was killed in the latest Guard Codex. Now, since the backlash from the community, Games Workshop has released a community post vaguely implying that this might not be the end of the character. And this is where we're going to kind of get into the speculation part of the video. Now, some people have noticed that in the new Angron model, there is a skull with an eye, and they believe that might be Yarrick's skull. And the theory is that maybe Angron killed Yarrick somehow. And that might be released when the new campaign kind of tail ending 9th edition kind of comes out. And I think it would be fine if they decide to have Yarrick go out fighting. I just think the way they kind of announced it with it just being kind of a eulogy and not really stating for sure is kind of lame. But I also kind of like it when not everything is explained out. And if they never reveal the exact death of Yarrick, I think that's okay. But I think they should play on what would happen if Ghazghkull finds out. Obviously, Gazgul incredibly respected this adversary. Gazgul let him go, saying that good enemies are hard to find. And the orcs feared him and respected him and thought he was, basically brutally cunning, a trait that they worship in Mork. Rather disappointing that they would just kill him. Now, I really hope they don't make him an Eternal like they did with that one guardsman who tried to save the Emperor. I really hope they don't do anything crazy like that. And if they kill the character off so they can make way for new characters, I think that's perfectly fine as well, as long as the kind of arc has some sort of satisfying end to it and the kind of the secondary and third effects of them are kind of explored. But currently, with the way it was handled at this time, I can understand why a lot of people are upset as not much information was kind of given out. The model was just kind of taken out of rotation, and they assumed. I mean, most people would just assume that the model was taken out of rotation because maybe they're going to come out with a new one in a few months. That's not irregular. They do that often, where they'll take certain characters out of rotation, and then after like a few months, they might re-release it, or they'll just move on without saying anything. So I do appreciate the fact that actually took the time to make kind of like a eulogy for him, or like a statement for Yarrick. I just kind of wish it was a bit more fanciful. Seems like a kind of a lame way to write out a character who I think really acted as a good foil to one of a fantastic character, Gazgul. There are many theories that he may still be alive, and Games Workshop is kind of encouraging these theories. I think my favorite theory personally is that because orcs believe that he's super tough and unkillable, he is, much as the reason why their weapons work is because they have a latent psychic ability. So anything they believe tends to become true if enough of them believe it, as they like have psychic energy they give off. So even though their guns are just a box of nails strapped together haphazardly with a pipe, it still fires because they believe it should fire. And that's a really kind of fun, interesting lore for the orcs. Now, they've kind of retconned a lot of that. Now they say that they have just inherent knowledge on how things work. So an orc would just know how to build a gun because they're biological weapons and it's like in their DNA to know how to make weapons of war and things. Which, it's a fantasy universe, right? Sci-fi is still fantasy. It's still fiction. And if they want to go with their DNA magically makes them know how to make weapons, that's fine. I think the psychic abilities is more fun personally. So I subscribe to the older lore, but it's a fantasy setting, right? You can take whatever bits of it you enjoy and you can ignore the bits you don't like and make your own kind of narrative, because at the end of the day, it's just a bunch of little plastic toys that you are collecting and painting to have fun and play a game with. So I want to give everyone a moment down in the comments below. Just put down your favorite character, right? If you have a character that you think is super cool, it's entirely possible it's a character I do not know about. I've not been in the 40K kind of lore and I haven't read much about it for very long. If you have a favorite character, maybe just put down in the description who that character is, what setting they're in. So either like 40K, fantasy. I don't think they've done much writing for Age of Sigmar yet, but I could be wrong. There could be some brand new Age of Sigmar characters that people really are attached to. Please put those in the comments below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and thank you for watching.